For most of his time in office, Governor Ron DeSantis has conducted a war on what he calls woke. He says this is the state where woke comes to die. But as the legislature in Tallahassee enters its final week, some anti-woke bills may be in trouble. As the Tallahassee Democrat reports, Florida Senate President Kathleen Passidomo, a Republican, may be putting Florida's war on woke to bed. She was asked this week about several bills that appear to be stalled in the legislature. The measures include prohibitions on the display of pride and rainbow flags in government buildings, bans on taking down Confederate monuments, and regulations on the use of pronouns. Passidomo said the bills in question were effectively dead. A related bill, a total ban on abortions, has not been heard in the House committee and has no Senate companion. So, Catherine, is this the end of the war on woke? Has it run out of steam?
You know, I think it's a little too soon to say that. I think there's still quite a bit of quote-unquote woke policy that is worth watching. There's a bill and a rule that came out from the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles last week affecting the ability of transgender people to change the gender marker on their driver's license. You know, we're still waiting on the Supreme Court to rule on the legality of the 15-week abortion ban, which could trigger the 6-week abortion ban to go into effect. And we're also waiting on them to rule on the legality of the ballot amendment to protect abortion rights in the Florida Constitution. So there's still quite a bit of things to keep an eye on, but it's certainly the momentum for some of those bills has slowed down, which is definitely an interesting development.
Akash, from the base of the Republican Party, do you sense that there's still room for more legislation to be passed? The governor's had a lot of success on these culture war issues. He's got a lot of victories that he's racked up. Do you think there's more room for other anti-woke bills?
Yeah, I think there is. But I think Passidomo has always been clear on her messaging. I mean, she's been a popular president. She's more about state priorities over party lines, and that's her message to the public. And I think as you go into conferencing in the next 2 weeks before session ends, you'll see some concessions.
Mm-hmm. Mitch, what's it like up there in Tallahassee where you are?
You know, Rob, you mentioned about the flag bill and the monument bill, and actually there was some timing involved with that. Maybe it could have gone a different way. A week ago Tuesday, Jonathan Martin, Republican senator from the Fort Myers area, he was carrying both those bills, and they were up at the same time in committee. He decided to temporarily postpone the flag bill, so that is definitely dead. Then you had the monument bill, which had a wild hearing in a committee last week. A term white power was invoked. And so Senator Passidomo, when she spoke to the press this week, she actually called the historical monument bill benign, but she felt it had been weaponized by both sides. I think people have very strong feelings about that. I think that will come back next year, has a good chance of still getting through. This is a big issue. Jacksonville just got rid of a monument back in December that has a lot of conservative people very upset. But yeah, the way it's flowing right now, you're not going to get some of those big bills that we saw in the 23 legislation.
And Jennifer, how do Democrats see this? I mean, the governor has a lot of victories over the last 3 or 4 years when it comes to culture war issues. What's your take on, the fact that some of the new ones this year don't appear to be moving forward?
I think that the chickens are coming home to roost. You've unleashed in the last 2 years some of the most extreme bills that have ever been written into legislation. That motivates a lot of angry people to come and push for even more harsh bills and say things like white hate and say racist things in the Senate. And it becomes very apparent who and what type of people in the population they have activated to come be proponents of this legislation. It's a culture war, and people who want legislation passed that actually helps the citizens of this state aren't into culture wars. So I think the chickens are coming home to roost.
And Mitch, that goes back to what you said earlier at the hearing over whether or not a monument should be protected or Confederate monuments should be allowed to be taken down. Some of the Democrats said that some of the testimony was really extreme at that hearing.
Yeah, they walked out, actually. They didn't take a vote. It upset Senator Martin very much so, and it was a really crazy meeting. Senator Pizzo actually, somebody supposedly called him an epithet, and so it got really pretty intense. And so it's not going to happen. I should say that both those bills, by the way, were filed last year and kind of didn't get as much attention. There were so many other things going on. They didn't happen last year either. So, and we were talking last year about the war on woke fading out. So they're not maybe as potent in terms of what people really care about. I know that they were on that message of the GOP, what they'd like to see this year. But again, I think the historical monument bill will come back definitely next year.